Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but first, let's hear from our podcast sponsors that make it all possible. We want to thank Final Forms for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Final Forms is the industry leader in registration, but you have to know this. Final Forms is more than just registration. Final Forms is a team, it's technology, and it's a service that serves schools in the areas of compliance, communication, and risk management solutions. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility. It has reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that go with athletics. Can help with team communication and attendance, and even certification management for coaches. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. And it does this with secure language translation, and it's ADA compliant. You know, it's time for you to talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps, go to finalforms.com/Jake. Once again, go to finalforms.com/Jake to find out exactly what Final Forms can do for you. We also want to say thanks to Violet Defense for their support. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology enables them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement existing products, or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school, Violet Defense has the solutions and the experience you need. Go to violetdefense.com for more information about their great products. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive. You know, it's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year, while also creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call them at 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com and find out exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to say thank you to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They've got a variety of interactive, touchscreen video consoles, along with an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Or to learn more and get started with your own digital Wall of Fame tribute, call them at 614-981-3589, or you can email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. We also want to say thank you to Huddle. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Over 200,000 teams, including some of the best in the world, use Huddle to help their teams play better. Huddle's the complete performance platform. They have online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras like the Huddle Focus. Of course, there's analytics, but there's a lot more. Huddle is also built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high school and college programs, and even the pros use Huddle to help their teams play at the highest level. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes, a lot of their parents, and the coaches of the college and university teams you're trying to get to recruit your kids. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and your program and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can find out more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your program by going to hometownticketing.com and talk to their experts. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. And we want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director's Toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also connects you with the 95% of the parents and the student athletes who really love your program, and it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them show you how to take your athletic program from good to great. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We've got a really cool guest today, Kelly Oberle from out in California. She is the founder of Access Human Potential. She works with corporations, athletic organizations, all with the goal of trying to maximize performance, focusing on mental performance. So Kelly Oberle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jake. I'm excited to be here and ready to go.
Okay. Kelly and I connected through Jen Brooks's global community of women in high school sports. She presented for that group, very brief presentation, but very cool, intrigued me. And I reached out to her and she agreed to speak to our audience of ADs and coaches. So Kelly, let's go and jump right in. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that 5-minute bio, where you were born, where you grew up, what kind of sports background maybe you had, and what kind of led you to your current gig founding Access Human Potential.
Okay. Well, so I actually was born and raised in St. Louis. So I'm a Midwest girl at heart. And all through growing up, I was the third of 3 girls. And I had a liking for sports for as long as I can remember. So I played multiple sports. In high school, I really focused on softball and basketball. And those were kind of my 2 go-to sports. I was fortunate enough to get some opportunities in softball. I ended up graduating and going to Northwestern University, and I played softball there in Evanston, Illinois. So I was a softball player throughout my college career. And when I graduated, I actually had an organizational psych major. And so I had dreams of being in sports marketing, but then realized that that might not be the best career for me. So I went into corporate sales and marketing and management. And so I spent the majority of my career working in high-tech firms, doing, managing teams. About 15 years ago or so, I was really burnt out of corporate, and I thought maybe I'd missed my calling. So I left, and I'd always been involved with sports, and I'd done some volunteer work with some youth teams. But I decided to go back, and I did some substitute teaching in addition to consulting with organizations, and I coached for 2 years high school. So it was 2 or 3 years, and I really focused on, we had a great program, a lot of kids that were, exceptional athletes. So I really was able to coach at a pretty high level as far as kids that end up going Division I, Division II, and I kind of saw that world. And but I also realized that I wasn't going to go the route of teaching, and so I decided to actually dial back a little bit and focus on teaching kids around speed and agility and things that make you a better athlete. And so I worked a lot with younger kids and just doing athletic training and consulting. And so I was doing that for a few years. And then I looked and got an opportunity to go back into corporate. I wanted to complete my master's. So I went and worked in executive management and completed my master's in leadership. What I noticed through this time, though, was that I went in cycles of burnout. And it brought me back to when I was in a college athlete and trying to balance school and athletics. And I started to look at, different holistic ways to manage burnout for myself, because my body started to break down, whether it was I was getting colds. I remember when I was in college, I got 4 or 5 bronchitis episodes, and it was just being run down and not really understanding how to manage that stress level. And so through all of this, I started looking at holistic ways to kind of, one, recognize my stress levels, and then how to manage them. And I started to actually turn that into programs to teach corporations how to kind of build resilience. And so I was going through all of that, and I decided that I was going to go back out on my own. I did it in 2019, right before COVID, which some say is good and bad. But it was good for me. I have 3 kids. So I have 2 12-year-olds and a 15-year-old. And so through COVID, I was kind of managing, building my business. So I really was learning resilience hands-on, and also, taking care of the kids. And so through that, I did a program for a college, and their athletic director was in there. And she was like, this would be a great program for sports. And to be honest, I hadn't really made the connection between all the things I was doing in management and building resilience and my athletic background. And so what I've focused on over the last year and a half is really trying to still work with teams in an organization, but try to bring this to both high school and college level. And performance is a part of it, but it's really about trying to help people get to a state where they're not stressed out and they're not suffering from anxiety. So performance becomes much more natural. So that's kind of my 5-minute, hopefully I was 5 minutes. So.
Oh, no, it was great. And I love how you talked about, the performance being, kind of an umbrella term. There's a lot of different things that we all do in our life. Your job for an adult, that would be, maybe the sports for a college or high school athlete. But there's so much in addition to that we, try to do in a 24-hour period. So yeah, performance as it applies to life and other things. Very cool stuff.
Yeah.
For our listeners, we're visiting today with Kelly Oberle. She's the founder of Access Human Potential. We're going to find out a little bit more about that, what it involves, and maybe how it can help you as an athletic director. Well, let's take a quick break and hear from one of our podcast sponsors. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Final Forms for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Final Forms is the industry leader in athletic registration, but you have to know this. Final Forms is more than just forms. Final Forms is a team, it's technology, and it's a service that helps schools in the areas of compliance, communication, and even provides risk management solutions. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility and has reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that go with being an athlete. Final Forms can help with team communication and attendance, and even certification management for coaches. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. And it does this using secure language translation and ADA compliance. It's time for you to talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps and find out what Final Forms can do for you in your program, go to finalforms.com/Jake. One more time, that's finalforms.com/Jake to get started and find out exactly what Final Forms can do for you. Welcome back, everyone. We're visiting today with Kelly Oberle, who is the founder of Access Human Potential. We're going to find out a little bit more about that. But first, Kelly, we always like to hear about the mentors that have been involved in our guest's life. None of us get to where we're at on our own. So, who've been some of the people that have helped you along the way?
Yeah, Jake, I've thought about this question, and when I think about mentors and I go back in time, uh, I had a rougher childhood growing up, but I was fortunate to have sports as an outlet for me. And so I would say my earliest mentors would be some of the recreational coaches that I started with, that provided an avenue to make it fun, so that I could always fall back when it started to get super competitive and sometimes the fun gets lost in the competition, that I could remember that. But also my grandmother was the team grandmother. So she was the one who was able to, my parents had to work nights. So she was the one who was able to kind of take me to my games. And she, I think, had that unconditional love for me. So I was pretty hard on myself growing up as far as, trying to be the best I could be as an athlete. And I had to work a little harder. I didn't have some of the talents that people naturally have. So I had to put in a lot of time. And I think that she showed me that support, that, she was there for me and my teammates. And so I think she showed that you could be competitive in sports, but you could also be supportive. And so that was, as far as if I look at my early career, obviously through college, there were different players that kind of modeled behavior for me, both positive and negative. So I kind of learned sometimes from the behavior that I didn't want to be known for. So I think, sometimes mentors are, I don't know if you call them reverse mentors, but that they can kind of show you a way that maybe that's not the way you want to be. And then in my career, especially early in my career, I was fortunate to get a couple of managers and leaders who saw some potential, and they put me in positions either to be noticed or to work on projects that would help me grow. And so I think that that's been one of those things that I look back on and say, how do you help other people the way you've been helped? So you just try to model that behavior. So it's hard to say specific people. It's kind of a general feel.
I'm glad you took the question down that little path. So I'm going to ambush you here.
Okay.
In our profession, leadership and education and coaching, mentoring is so important. And I love how I appreciate your candor and sharing about, the impact that coaches maybe had in your life. So you brought it up. What's an example? You don't have to name the person or something, but what's an example where, you have felt called to give back and mentor that next generation? Can you share a quick one with us?
Yeah. So actually what's interesting is when I was working in my 20s, I actually did a lot of volunteer coaching. And so I worked with younger athletes because I felt, and not for not running camps. As I was older, I ran some camps, where people would come and sign up, but more like the recreational league, to try to support younger athletes that maybe don't always see females in coaching positions. So is that what you're kind of asking, or?
It's a great example. So I appreciate you sharing, and you can share some more, or if that's the story, we're okay with that too.
No, I think, a part of going back to coach, when I was pretty steady and stable in my career, was the feeling that maybe I had missed something, that I was too driven. I went to a university where career was what people did, right? So I graduated, and I wanted to be out in the world. And, I sometimes think if I would have went to a different university, my path would have been different. And so I was in a position where I could leave and I could coach high school, which is, not exactly, some people looked at it like it wasn't the greatest career move for me financially. So, but it was really like, I felt that calling. And I really did look at, should I have been a teacher and should I have been, coaching? And probably just where I was at in my life, that was a decision that I couldn't go back and change. But at least I was able to get some experience. And I think that, and I tell my kids this too, is look at the decisions that you're making and understand, there's different forks in the road and it's not right or wrong, but make them for the right decisions or for the right reasons. So I think that calling of getting back, and I think right now the calling of looking and saying, it's tough to be a person right now in the world with all the anxiety and stress that's happening. And there are people who are fortunate enough to have avenues to understand how to release that. And I feel like in athletics, especially, that there is a give back part that says, look, I know what it's like on the leadership side, and I know what it's like on the corporate world. And I also know what it's like to be a student athlete. And there's a lot more resources now, but there's still a stigma attached to that of, hey, maybe I do need a little bit of help that's outside of just performance. So.
Well, very cool stuff. I love how you mentioned, your university was to get you out into the world. I wanted to stay at the university because I didn't want to go out in the world. I was enjoying being an athlete and a student. And then that's why I went into teaching and coaching, because I didn't want a quote real job. So I ended up, doing that for 41 years. So I guess it worked out okay. But
no, and I think maybe I need to explain that a little. So at where I went, we had the choice of going the kind of more the teacher route in education or the business route. And I wasn't sure which way to go. And I was directed to go more based on my background, to go more of the business route. And I think if I had it all to do over, I would have went to be able to teach and coach, if that makes sense. Like, if you looked back, so I don't regret anything, but I think, I didn't have, in that case, I didn't have the mentor. The mentor I had was more of a business mentor as opposed to an academic and athletic mentor.
Right. No, but again, it seems to have worked out pretty well. Okay.
Yeah.
For our listeners, we're visiting with Kelly Oberle. She's the founder of Access Human Potential. We're going to take a little bit of a dive into that when we come back from the break. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Huddle for their support of the podcast. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Over 200,000 teams, including some of the best in the world, use Huddle to help their teams play better using video and analytics. Huddle's the complete performance platform. They have online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras like the Huddle Focus. There's always been analytics, but there's a whole lot more. Huddle's also built for every level of play, from club and youth programs all the way through high school and college teams. And even the pros are using Huddle to help their athletes play at the highest level. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes, a lot of their parents, and the coaches of the teams you're trying to get to recruit your kids. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and your program and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest today is Kelly Oberle. She's the founder of Access Human Potential. Kelly, you've talked a little bit about, what Access Human Potential is, but let's take a little bit of a dive into it. Our audience is ADs. They came out of the coaching world usually. And in that 2-hour practice, there's only, 2 hours. And so choosing what you're going to devote to, conditioning or skill development or teamwork, that's always the challenge for a coach and, for an AD. So what are what is Access Human Potential? How does it work? And, maybe, why should a coach or an AD listening decide to devote some of their practice time to it? Can you help us out?
Let me give it a stab. So Access Human Potential, what we have created, or what I've created, is really the idea of building resilience to be a better performer. And so again, kind of had looked at it from teams, and have now segued into also working with athletic teams and coaches and athletic directors. And so what we do is we'll go in and customize programs based on the needs of the organization, or of the team. So for some teams, it's performance based. They've got kids that are in their heads, or they've got kids that are struggling. And so they want a program around learning how to handle stress and use stress in a proactive way and a positive way, so that you can get better performance. We have athletic directors that reach out to us regarding coaches, to help coaches be able to, one, manage their own stress, because obviously it's been a super stressful time. So, if you're running a team, you're only going to be as strong as you're feeling. And so with burnout is a huge factor in organizations, and it's a huge factor in coaching and athletic directors also. So we have some programs around managing stress, and also being able to perform as far as difficult conversations, communication, and understanding what their why is, because that's a big portion of managing stress and being in a better place to be able to lead. So those are the types of programs that we really work with. And, for athletic directors and for coaches, the challenge is, how do you fit all of this in? And when, you are, for the most part, wins and losses matter and performance matters. So you never want to move away from what will help you be, successful in your career. But most of the science shows and the data shows that if you can help people manage the way that they handle anxiety and stress, they will be better performers. And I think that although coaches can do that, they also have a responsibility to put people in places to help their athletes be successful. So some coaches are very strong at the X's and O's, right? Some are very strong at the people management. Some are strong at strength and conditioning. And then they bring in outside people to help them on those other things. And so I think, the area of mental performance is so broad. You have to kind of just look at what's going to be best for your program. And are you really handling the anxiety that's happening for both athletes and for coaches and for athletic directors in general? And so that's kind of what we are trying to do, is be a resource.
And I think that's a great way to phrase it. I don't think there's a single coach or AD that's listening now that would disagree that, the mental performance aspect of overall athletic performance is underutilized and so very important. It's just getting to that tipping point where they begin to devote time, or bring in someone, like yourself, to address that and help their student athletes, become so much better. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask Kelly to, take us on a deeper dive into some of the things that maybe she's done with organizations or teams to maybe illustrate, how it can happen with your program. And, again, always repeating the why it should happen. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back. We want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive for their support. Sideline Interactive can help your school's athletic department raise $10,000 or more every single year with their scoring tables and video boards. It also helps create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. To find out more, go to sidelineinteractive.com or call 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com and see just what their fantastic products can do for you. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. We're visiting today with Kelly Oberle. Kelly, you gave us some broad brush strokes of access human potential. Let's take a deeper dive. What are some things that you've done with teams or corporations or other entities that'll again help paint a picture for that cranky old athletic director or coach that still isn't quite sold on how they can incorporate these types of mental performance, mental health activities into their existing practice plan?
Yeah, so I'll kind of walk through a couple of different scenarios that we've worked with. So one that was right at the height of COVID was working with a local out here, Santa Ana College, a JC program where we worked with their women's basketball program. And we were reinforcing some things that they've always done with their program around, mental toughness and, understanding resilience. But what we did is we created a program for them because they weren't able to practice. So they could practice on their own, but they couldn't be together. And so, for student athletes, and I think athletic directors understand this and coaches do too, to lose a year of that, especially as an 18 to 21-year-old, where you've been playing your whole life, and then to have your world disrupted, maybe the first month or so might have been, hey, this was a nice break. But after a while, you start to lose your identity and why you're really doing the things you're doing. So with this program, we created a program around helping them understand their stressors. And we did it all via Zoom. So we did, let's understand what's stressing you out with, for home. It's a JC, so a lot of the kids were also working and also, trying to play basketball and also stay connected with their team. So we were able to create exercises where it was kind of a team building, but it was with an idea of, hey, this is what's going on with you. Why you might be feeling angry, or you might be frustrated, or you might not just feel like, hey, in the morning, do I really want to do anything? Do I want to work on stuff on my own? So that was part of it. And then we actually integrated some things around character strengths so that they could understand that they were more than just the athlete. They were more than just the performance. So a lot of times with teams, the people who are playing all the time get most of the accolades. The people on the bench maybe don't get as much. When you start integrating things like character strengths, you start to say, hey, maybe the humor that you have, you might not be the one who's scoring all the points, but that humor is a very valuable part of being a teammate, and helps us, and use that more. So with character strengths, it's one of those things that if you can use them and you're aware of what they are, then we can shape a team around, hey, these are our character strengths. So, things like forgiveness. If you've got a team that's really hot-headed against referees, you can talk about forgiveness and how, hey, it doesn't mean that you're okay with the call, but maybe you don't need to be yelling at the referee right now in the heat of the moment. So it helps with coaches and with players. But really that program, we focused on them understanding their stresses and then understanding what they brought to the table as not only an athlete, but as a human being. And what was cool about it was they got to talk about what was going on, and they got to bond even though they couldn't be together. And they got to understand what their purpose was as far as being a teammate, and a person in a scarier time, where not everyone could put words around it. But that program, whether it's during COVID or it's outside of COVID, that's a great program for schools that are really trying to build camaraderie, and maybe trying to get to that next level of working together and being valued as teammates.
Well, those were all really great examples, and hopefully that paints a more clear picture for that individual we were talking about. We're going to do this at the end of the podcast, but if one of our listeners wants to reach out, pick your brain a little bit more, find out more about Access Human Potential, what's the best way they can get in touch with you?
So they can reach me. I'm on LinkedIn. So under my name, Kelly Oberle. You can also reach out on our website, which is accesshumanpotential.com. So pretty simple, or koberle@accesshumanpotential.com. So those are easy ways to reach us.
Very easy. Okay. Kelly Oberle, Access Human Potential. We're going to be back with some more, so please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thank you to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. They're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They've got a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles and an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com or learn more and get started with your digital Wall of Fame tribute. Call them at 614-981-3589 or email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com.
I like those references.
We're back with Kelly Oberle from Access Human Potential. Kelly, one of the questions we've been asking our guests has to do with this idea of toughness. In my opinion, toughness is still an important quality of the athletic experience. I think some people say resilience, and I hear toughness. How does a coach or leader help kids, or let's say adults, to develop toughness while also being sensitive to and aware of the very real social emotional challenges that Generation Z is experiencing these days? Do you have any advice for us?
Yeah. So, toughness is, I grew up in the era of, like wipe it off, shake it off, get up, if you can walk, you can play. And I think, I don't think that there's anything wrong with physical toughness and pushing physical toughness. I think where we struggle is understanding that toughness isn't just about physical toughness. And everyone has their threshold of pain and what they can tolerate. But I think that, when I look back on how I was pushed, I think that there were things that made me who I am today. I went bowling with my kids the other day, and, there's a part of me that still wants to win every time I do something. And I think, I was conditioned that way. But I think for athletes in my generation and in, today's generation, we have to be cognizant of what mental toughness really means. And it doesn't mean that you just shake everything off and you don't feel what you need to feel, or you don't admit when things are overwhelmed. So what happens is that, you just push those things down until they boil over. And you see it with anger. I mean, we've seen instances of it with both coaches, with parents, and with athletes, of where, they're acting out of character, where they get so angry. And I think part of that is just not having those honest conversations around, hey, sometimes I need to step back. And it doesn't mean I'm weak. It just means I need to step back and maybe take a day off, or take a little time to be, to feel what I need to feel. There's no crying in baseball. Well, science says crying can be a huge release that will make you a much better performer. if that's what you need to do. So that's not a sign of weakness. It's just how someone processes their pain or their anger, or their anxiety. And I think part of what we try to do is educate around what is toughness and how do you build it without breaking someone. And I think that's kind of that's the magic of creating an individual, a human. They're also an athlete, but they're a human first, that is that can have a growth mindset, that can move past things. But just because you move past it, you have to move through it. You can't just bypass it. And I think sometimes when we try to teach toughness, we're trying to teach them to just bypass it instead of moving through it.
Right. You touched on such an important point of, communicating, exactly what you mean, by, being tough. As you said, back in the old days, I'm much older than you. Come on, Jake, you got to be tough, or come on, Jake, you got to suck it up. We knew what they meant, and we did it. And I think over the years, we've learned better ways to, more fully communicate those concepts. So very, very good stuff. This has been really cool finding out more about your program and a little bit about you. But we're not done yet. We always like to wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. You've been a successful athlete, successful coach, but right now I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. We're going to take a quick break and hear from Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack, who sponsor the Athletic Toolbox segment. And when we come back, we're going to find out what Kelly Oberle is going to put in her athletic toolbox. Please stay with us. We want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director Toolbox segment. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also connects you with the 95% of the parents and the players that really love your program. And it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them show you how to take your athletic program from good to great. Well, it's that time. We've been visiting with Kelly Oberle of Access Human Potential. Kelly, right now, I'm going to ask you to send out a brand new athletic director, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. What 3 items are going to go in Kelly Oberle's athletic director toolbox?
Okay, so the first, I think, is, especially as a new athletic director, because I look at it as you're a new leader, right? So one of the things that I've seen when I've led, and also people that I've worked with, is organization. An organizational tool is one of the most critical pieces of being a good leader. And what I mean by that is whether it's, calendar, or it's having a process of knowing how I'm going to organize everything so that I don't get overwhelmed. So that's probably the first type of tool that I would say. A second is really around communication and conflict. So understanding what your communication style is going to be and what your conflict style is, so that when you're dealing, because I know in my own personal experience as both a coach and as a parent now, and as an athlete, that communication is one of the best tools that you can have to avoid conflict. And having a conflict style that allows you to not avoid conflict, but address it in a positive manner can help you avoid so many things as an athletic director, and really run the program that you'd like to be known as, and as a leadership. The third I would say is to know who you can have as mentors, and as confidants. So a lot of times in organizations, especially like as an entrepreneur, which I think is what an athletic director really is you end up feeling like you're doing it all on your own. You may not be able to talk to your coaches because they're your coaches, and you want to project leadership. So find those people that you can reach out to, whether it's the athletic director's toolbox, whether it's, fellow athletic directors, or even people in the community that can help you bounce ideas off, and not feel so overwhelmed. And then the fourth tool is kind of the work that I do, whether it's me or it's someone in your area. Find people that can help you understand your stressors and not get burnt out, because one of the things we really focus on is regulating the central nervous system. That's kind of the bottom line of stress management. So you need to have awareness, and then you need to have tools that help you be not be overwhelmed with the things that happen. And it doesn't mean that you're weak. It just means that you're human, because being in a new position, you've got a lot of stressors and you've got a lot of unknowns. So I think those type of tools, they may be a little bit different than a traditional athletic director toolbox. But I think if you look at yourself as the leaders you are, and you have to be in the best frame of mind, and you don't want to get burnt out. And it's very real, what's happening with athletic directors, with coaches. The burnout and the anxiety is real. And so finding some things that can help you as a leader is critical.
And we like to say that all of our tool suggestions are good, because they really are. But the ones you gave, those are actually, well up in our list of the top 20 tools for success. And those tools that you just suggested are going to go into the second edition of the Athletic Director's Toolbox, which listeners, that's going to be out probably the first or second week in July. Kelly Oberle, thanks so much for being on the podcast. One more time, if one of our listeners wants to reach out, find out a little bit more about the programs that you offer, how can they get a hold of you?
Email is great. So KOB as in boy, ERLE at accesshumanpotential.com. You can go on our website. There's ways to reach out to us via our website, which is accesshumanpotential.com. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And one thing I just wanted to mention is, with mental performance, or, building resilience, these don't have to be these huge programs. They can be small steps that just move people in the right direction. So we do a lot around micro learnings also, so that it's not 2 hours in a day or things like that. So there's all different ways that you can start to address this. And I think for athletic directors, it's as critical for you from a health and wellness perspective as it is for your coaches and as it is for your athletes. So that was my one little.
No. And again, I'm so glad you shared that today, and so glad you were on the program. Okay. Kelly Oberle, Access Human Potential. Thanks so much, and all the best moving forward.
Thanks, Jake.
For listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews get uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. And before we go, we want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing for their support. Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can find out more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your program by going to hometownticketing.com and talking to their experts. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. Thanks again for listening to today's episode. Come back again next time for another episode of the Educational AD Podcast.